Well, welcome. I'm Susan Forrest, and I am your instructor for this semester in microbiology. And I'm so excited to get to share with you my love for microbiology. I hope that in the next 8 to 16 weeks, depending on when you're taking this class, that you will really get a lot out of the class and that useful information that you can use in your life, in your profession, and just share with your family and friends so that we're more educated and understanding of what's going on in the world in terms of microorganisms and microbiology. So before we begin, I want to tell you and invite you to take notes as you go through these video lectures. You should take notes as you go along. There are PowerPoints available, so you can print them off and just write on the PowerPoints. I do write things on the slides as we go through the PowerPoints, and I think you'll find those things helpful. Also, I suggest that you pause whenever we have times where there's a concept check, or whenever I ask you to pause the video so that you can think about things before you get to see the next section in the slides. I try to make this a little bit more like what I do in the face-to-face classroom. And so if you pause, then that you're getting more of the benefit of it. And it really helps to reset your brain and make you think about what you just went over, what you just learned, and what are the important things out of what we just talked about. And so I really encourage you to pause when I ask you to pause. So without further ado, we're going to look at Chapter 1, which is the main themes of microbiology. And this is a lot of information. In Chapter 1, we go through everything from what is a microorganism, what are some of the fields of microbiology, to the impact of microorganisms on the planet, and what are some of the different uses of microorganisms, what are some of the benefits of microorganisms, and what are some of the general characteristics of microorganisms. Then look at the history of the science of microbiology and some of the things that discoveries that have been made in the last couple of 100 years, and so where we are today with microbiology and the science of microbiology. So that is where we're going. This is a huge chapter. But before we get started, I really want you to think about, what is microbiology? How would you define it? What are microorganisms? And what are some examples of microorganisms? So pause and then come back, and we'll check with you in just a minute after you've had a minute or so to think about it, and maybe write those in your notes to begin your notes. Okay, well, I hope you went away and you thought about this question, but if you haven't, we'll go over this information. A definition of microbiology. What is the definition of microbiology? If we were to define microbiology, that is something that means small, and then bio has to do with life, and ology, what comes from the root word logos, which means the study of, whatever that may be. And so this is literally the study of small life. And so what is small? That's a good question. And what is life? And so those are some really good questions. So small, in the reference of this video, is not able to be seen without not able to be seen with the naked eye. And what is life? Well, that is a very good question. So life is, it starts with the cell, so it's at least going to have a cell, but a living thing has all these various characteristics that make it a living organism, but it consists of cells, and it's able to grow and metabolize. So it's able to use energy, use food for energy or make energy, but do some sort of metabolism to obtain energy in some way and use it. It's able to reproduce and able to evolve. So living things consist of cells. They grow, they metabolize, they obtain energy and use it. That would be metabolism. They are able to reproduce and they're able to grow or evolve. And so these are some of the characteristics that we see of living things. It's not a very extensive list, but it's a pretty decent list. And you know, really living things all consist of cells. They all grow, they all metabolize, they have to obtain energy and use it. They have to reproduce and they have to evolve. So all these things true of living things. And while an individual may not evolve, the population of individuals can evolve. And so those would be characteristics that living things have. And if it's lacking one of those characteristics, then it's not a living thing, especially if it does not consist of cells, then it's not a living thing. So let's look at our section 1.1. So what is the scope of microbiology? And we're going to look at the 6 types of microorganisms that we're going to study in this book and identify multiple professions using microbiology. So microbiology is a specialized area of biology that deals with microorganisms too small to be seen with the naked eye. And so it's the study of microorganisms that are too small. So microorganisms or microbes, as they're called, sometimes called bugs or germs or viruses or agents, but all of those things will be covered in the scope of microbiology. Some of the main microorganisms fall into these 6 groups. And so you're saying 6, what's the 6th one? Because I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but helminths are also considered a microorganism for the purposes of this course. They are multicellular organisms that they mature, but the form that their mature form is visible to the naked eye, but the way that they're transmitted is through a microscopic egg, and so that is sometimes, most of the times, not able to be seen with the naked eye. So helminths are worms. Bacteria and fungi, protozoa, viruses, and prions are also considered major groups. So bacteria is going to be one of the major groups that we're going to look at, and viruses, of course, even though they are not a living thing, they are acellular, and I would say not living, but we still consider them an agent that we study, an infectious agent, and so those will be ones that will focus on bacteria and viruses. Fungi, protozoa, we'll talk about a little bit, and prions we'll talk about a little bit, but these 2 are going to be the major groups of microorganisms that we're going to study this semester. So microbes are easy and difficult to study. They're large reproducing microorganisms, or large populations, and they can be grown in the laboratory so we can study them and we can control their growth and everything. They reproduce, like a generation reproduces every 20 to 30 minutes in some bacteria, and some even faster than that. But like an E. coli, typical E. coli population can reproduce and have a generation of about 20 to 30 minutes. So, but the problem is that they're so small they cannot be seen directly, and so we have to use instruments like microscopes to be able to see them. And sometimes, like with viruses, they cannot even be seen unless you have an electron microscope. And so seeing them directly is a problem. But they are easy to grow. I love microbiology because, like, I'm a procrastinator by heart, and I can like wait until the night before and put the microorganisms in the incubator, and boom, they've grown up within that period of time. So it's fantastic if you're a procrastinator like me. Microbiologists study the cell structure and function, so like the anatomy and physiology of the microbes. the growth and physiology, genetics, taxonomy, evolutionary history, and the interactions between the living and the non-living environment, which would be the ecology. So it covers really every area of biology. And this class is made mainly for non-majors, people that are going into the health sciences. So it's a great general biology class for you to cover, but we're only going to cover microorganisms, so we don't get to see multicellular animals and plants. But it really is a pretty good coverage of biology if you haven't had biology. So the branches of microbiology are something that we really want you to know a little bit more about, and how, what are some of the professions that you can go into, because sometimes I've had several students through the years who have actually decided, I really don't know if I want to be a nurse, or I don't know if I really want to be a physician's assistant. I really love this microbiology stuff. And so they decide to go into another field that is related to that is one of the branches that we're going to be talking about. And even if you do go into the nursing or healthcare field, sometimes you may specialize in one of these other areas that are microbiology fields. So some of the professions, you could be a medical microbiologist here if you deal with the microbes and the diseases in humans. So how the microbes cause disease, and it's really just talking about the pathogens. So you're really specifically and strictly looking at the pathogens, pathogenic microorganisms. And then some people go into public health microbiology or epidemiology, and this monitors and controls the spread of disease. It looks at the frequency, how common things are, different diseases, and where they're located and what groups of people have it. So a lot of this is statistics. And so you really have to love statistics. Be like, ooh, give me some good spreadsheets that I can might get my brain into, and figure out what this tells us about this microorganism. If you love that kind of thing, then maybe this is an area for you to go into. And as a nurse, or even a physician, you can go into epidemiology. There are nurse epidemiologists in some hospitals if they're big enough, and they look at the spread of the disease in the hospital setting and try and look at like where some infection rates are higher and what can we do to mitigate that, and kind of. So the U.S. Public Health Service, this would involve a lot of the county or parish boards of health will send information to the Centers for Disease Control, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, and here in the United States. And then the CDC will send their information to the World Health Organization, which is in Geneva, Switzerland. And so these are the people that go into an epidemic, and they try to figure out like who has this disease and how quickly is it spreading, and what can we do to mitigate the spread of this disease, and how can we treat it and cure people. So the branches of microbiology also include immunology, which immunology is going to study the immune system. So it's looking at the protective substances and cells that are produced in response to infection. So the immune response, and that includes vaccination, blood testing, and allergies, and just looking at how the immune system responds, and using and applying the immune system to various things like cancer and autoimmune diseases. Industrial microbiology looks at safeguarding our food and water. It also includes biotechnology. So this might be like a water department for a city. You could be looking at industrial, like here at a chicken, probably some Tyson factory, looking at the safety of the food. And biotechnology would be a different kind of area of industrial biology, microbiology. It's more like biomanufacturing. So that would include like making amino acids, beer, like vats, like very large amounts of it, drugs like penicillin, or possibly making things like insulin, enzymes that are necessary for some people who have like enzyme disorders or just enzymes in general, and vitamins. And so biomanufacturing, we are using microorganisms to actually make these things. And so it's not, it's the microbes that are actually producing it. And without microbes, we wouldn't be able to make beer or wine. It's pretty impossible to do that. So at the very least, we've been doing biomanufacturing for a really long time, but since the 1970s, we've made drugs and enzymes and vitamins and things using E. coli bacteria, and it's through genetic engineering that we've been able to do that. So other areas of microbiology, if you're here with like the judging team or something like that, you may be more interested in this agricultural microbiology, which is looking at the relationships between microbes and domesticated plants and animals. And so it's like our crops, but also our livestock, and seeing how they can be healthier and make something resistant to maybe certain types of pests. So you're going to have the plant specialists and you're going to have the animal specialists that are in this agricultural microbiology. But it's a huge area, and that, like if you go to K-State, they're going to be a lot in this, they're going to have a lot of people in this area of agricultural microbiology, because it's kind of a land-grant college, and that's where typically we've seen people going into agricultural microbiology is to try and figure out how to make better domesticated plants and animals. So environmental microbiology is kind of an emerging field. It looks at all the microbes and the diverse habitats, and so aquatic microorganisms and soil and geomicrobiology and astrobiology. And some of these, like astrobiology, is looking at life on other planets. So this is a kind of an emerging field. And geomicrobiology, looking at it in the crust of the earth and the soil. And so these are some of the different areas that are considered part of the environmental microbiology. So of all these other areas of microbiology on the planet. So what types of microorganisms are considered microbes, and list and describe some branches of microbiology. So pause and then rejoin us, and we'll look at section 2.